In today's episode, we're going to dive into what really makes for a successful project in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, because most people, they answer with two answers that are totally wrong. And not only that, I'm going to share with you what it will take for you to be a successful PM in the industry. It's a two-part equation, and most people and organizations usually only get one part. Before we dive in, a quick word from our sponsor, PPI Kaplan. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. What I want to talk about in today's episode is what makes successful projects in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. At the Engineering Management Institute, one of the things that we do most is project management training, or we call it learning and development. And typically we build custom programs for consulting firms. We're in the public sector now doing some work for some agencies. And essentially the first thing that we like to do, or one of the first things we do with the participants of each session, is we ask them the question, what makes successful projects? How would you describe it? And the answers we often get are happy clients, profitable projects, right? Making money, getting the project done on time, okay? So when you step back for a minute and you think about that, is that really what makes a successful project, or are those the results of a successful project, right? If your project is successful, then it may be profitable. If your project is successful, then your client will be happy. So that's the first thing that we have to reframe a little bit. We can't just think of finishing on budget, finishing with a big profit, finishing with happy clients as being our marker for successful projects. Like, that may indicate a project successful will be a result of it, but it's not what makes successful projects, right? What makes successful projects is effective project managers executing their projects effectively, right? What do I mean by that? There are 5 process groups of any project: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and of course, closing out your project. If you as a PM and your team members can effectively execute at every stage of that life cycle, then guess what? Your project will be successful, your clients will be happy, and you'll likely have a profitable project. Now, how do we do that? Well, that's what I want to dive into a little bit today. The key to effective project management, there's 2 components to it, right? There's managing project tasks, which is what most people categorize project management as, but there's also leading people. So you need to manage project tasks plus lead people, and that equals successful project execution. Now, what that means is that a large number of engineering, architecture, construction organizations tend to ignore half of the equation, which is the people leadership part of it. So let's look at each piece of this equation and break it down and how you can do really well at managing project tasks and also leading people. Now, let's start with project management tasks, okay? Managing your projects. So task management is very much your organizational skills. It's very much understanding the different phases of a project and how you can be successful in each one of them. One of the first things that we do with our clients when we build a custom program is we'll typically try to build a project life cycle for a typical project within their organization. Now, I just gave you the 5 process groups, right? Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. But what we try to do is drill down within each of those phases and put the tasks that get executed in their specific organization in each of these phases, right? So in your planning phase, you might be scoping the project, budgeting it, doing a project management plan, a quality plan, a safety plan, etc. All right. So understanding every phase of your specific projects that you work on, your client type that you work with, is kind of like step 1, really. We like to say that this life cycle is the roadmap for your success as a project manager. because all you have to do in essence is follow the roadmap, and then you'll be successful. Now, what that means is once you have that life cycle, then you do need to be able to effectively execute at each phase. Now, how do you do that? One, we're obviously big proponents of PM training, or like I said, we call it learning and development at EMI. So if you have a life cycle, you should be upskilling your project managers in every phase of the life cycle. So maybe they're involved in some of the initiating phases like the proposal or interacting with the client early on. They would need to know how to do that, right? Then you get into the planning phase. They would need to know how to create the planning documents, right? The work breakdown structure and so on and so forth. So they need to be trained on the hard skills that it takes in each of these phases as a project manager. What you also can think about is creating tools and templates for every one of the phases of the project. So again, if you're in the planning phase, you should have a template for a safety plan or a quality plan so that they're not recreating the wheel every time. And they know they need to go through that when they get to that phase, right? So when we work with organizations, and I'm sharing everything we do with you here so you can try to do some of it on your own certainly, is you want to have that project life cycle, and then you want to have the support in providing the knowledge and the tools and the templates at every single phase so that your PMs can feel good about it. And really just that first step of putting together a typical project lifecycle can really change the game for everybody. Because if you can't see it, you can't do it, right? That's what I always say, right? And then over time, if you have the tools, you have the templates, you can get better at it. Now, one caveat that I want to throw out here is a lot of times what happens is when we're working with firms, people will do the life cycle and then they'll say, well, we don't have any tools or templates yet. We're developing them, right? That's fine. You can develop them over time. You're not going to have every tool and template available immediately. But if you have the life cycle, you'll be surprised that even in your organization, there will be project managers across the firm that have their own tools, that they're doing their own safety plans. And then maybe they can share that template if you reach out to all your PMs and say, hey, we're trying to build more consistency into our practices. Who has a good spreadsheet for resourcing or estimating? Who has a good safety plan that you're working off of? Who has a good PMP or project management plan template that we can use? Who has a good addendum that you use for your clients if there's extra work? And you can accumulate this and do some knowledge sharing in your organization and build out that life cycle with the knowledge and the tools and templates that your PMs need. All right, so that's half the equation. That's managing your project tasks. Now we get to the harder side of the equation, right? Which is more of your kind of left brain, if you will, right? It's not the stuff that we're, right brain. Left brain, we just went over, right? All the analytical stuff. And then right brain is kind of more out of the box, more interacting with people, dealing with people. That's the harder part of the equation. And quite frankly, it's a part of the equation that most people or most organizations don't even consider in the equation. They just focus on the project management stuff, the task management stuff. So you need to be able to lead people if you want to be a successful project manager. I don't care what anybody says. If you're going to be able to manage the scope on a project, if you're going to be able to budget your projects and track them, if you're going to be able to keep the schedule on, you are going to have to talk to and interact with people. And not just people internally. You're going to have to deal with other stakeholders like the public potentially, like agencies, like a client or an owner that you're dealing with, or owner's rep, right? So you need to be well-versed in how to deal with people, how to have difficult conversations, how to build relationships, right? That's another piece of the puzzle that most project managers don't think about. If you're working in a private organization, you're probably responsible for business development as well. And even if not explicitly, you're responsible for business development because if you deliver great work on your projects, guess what? They're coming back for more work. And I would say most of the private firms that we work with, 70 to 80%, that's 70 to 80% of their work is repeat business. And guess who's responsible for that repeat business? You, the project manager. Now, easier said than done. How do we develop these skills that I'm talking about, these people skills? Well, of course, I'm a big proponent, again, of training or learning and development programs. We have people leadership programs at EMI that we use, and we try to integrate them into the project management programs when we build these custom programs, because you really need both pieces of the equation, right? So any kind of training you can get on it, There's books, there's videos. A lot of the people skills that I developed early in my engineering career, there wasn't training available to me. So I joined Toastmasters myself, which is a nonprofit speaking organization, helps people speak better. I read books, I watched videos, I did what I could. There's obviously many more videos and resources available online today that you can find, right? And the other way that you need to do it is you need to practice these skills, and you need to practice them in real life situations. Now, what I mean by that is when we run our courses, we'll do a session and we'll talk about delegation, let's say. Then we give them a framework and they have to delegate to some people before they come back for the next session. You need to force yourself to actually practice what you've learned. You can't just learn about something. If you don't put it into action, you won't get results. That's another equation I can share with you today. It's called the learning transfer equation, right? And it actually was in a paper by Pollock and Jefferson. It's pretty known pretty well in learning and development circles. And what it says is that in order for anyone to learn something, you have to have learning plus transfer, which would be activities or assignments or practice, that equals results. So if you're like me and you used to get sent to the PM boot camps where you go for a whole day and you get a bunch of information, you're only getting the information there. You're only learning. If you don't go and practice it and transfer it back to the job, you won't get results. And I wouldn't. I used to go to the boot camp, get the binder, put it on my shelf, and be done. So that's why in our programs, you have to come, get some information, practice it, and then come back for the next session, and let's talk about how it went. All right, so you need to either for yourself or encourage your project managers that they need to practice the skills that they want to improve. And the last piece that I'll give you on the people leadership side, which is something that's grossly absent in our industry, and we get this from all the programs we do and the feedback and the evaluations, is we need more mentoring. One of the things that we recommend that the firms that we work with do is when we build a foundational project management course, all of their project managers go through it, even if they've been managing projects for 20 years. Why? Because if I'm a new PM and you're a senior PM and I go through the course and you don't, how can you mentor me on what I'm learning, right? How do you know the language that I'm being taught if we're trying to have one consistent PM language across the company? So it's very important in your organization to create mentoring pathways. I'm not saying that you need to build a robust consistent mentoring program, like something that's very formal. I mean, you could, if you could do that, that'd be great. But it's more about creating pathways and opportunities to get people together. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're looking at doing with one of our clients right now, we do a virtual program for them. We do a session every so often. I mentioned it to you already, assignments, etc. But we're looking at building in a in-person event to the program, maybe less frequently, maybe once throughout the program. We've done this recently with another client on a leadership program. But in that in-person program, what you're going to focus on is more team building and relationship building activities, not so much your scoping and scheduling and budgeting. Maybe we do a project management activity, we do something fun, but you have to interact with people, and you're also going to meet other people, and you're going to be able to get mentoring and advice from senior PMs in the organization. So I believe personally that virtual and spaced repetition creates a better atmosphere for learning, but I think in person creates a better atmosphere for practicing and team building. And so if there's any way you can combine those together, you're going to get the best of both worlds. All right, so let me kind of recap what we talked about here today. This isn't very complex. It's kind of high level, simple, but a lot of firms miss it. So first of all, what makes successful projects? What makes successful projects is that the project manager and the team members need to effectively operate and execute at every phase of your project: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing out your project. That's what makes a successful project, not happy clients and big profits. Those are resultants of the successful projects. Now, how do we execute effectively at each phase of the project lifecycle? We need to be able to manage project tasks effectively, and we need to be able to lead people. So to manage project tasks effectively, we need to make sure that we go around that life cycle, and at each phase we have the knowledge that we need and the skills, and we're trained on it, and we have the tools and templates that can help us to be successful in those different phases. And from the people leadership side of things, how can we develop our people leadership skills? Training, courses, books, videos, practice, mentoring. Do what you want to get better at on a regular basis and do it in front of people. Do it with real clients. Do it with real team members. If you want to get better at delegating, start delegating today. As painful as it is, start doing it. All right. So I hope you found this useful. And really the whole idea here is you want to be a great project manager. Build your project management skills and build your people skills and put the two of them together, and you'll be the best possible project manager that you can be. I hope that you enjoyed the episode today. Remember, successful projects are created by project managers and their teams executing successfully at every phase of the life cycle. And within that execution as a PM, you'll need to manage your project tasks effectively and lead people effectively. If you do those two things, you will be an effective project manager. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineering professionals be better project managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.